Devin Pike with the Dallas Film Society, and it's easy in this day and age of 18 versions of ESPN and football being one of the biggest ratings boosts that any network can have as a part of their package, to see where the roots of football's domination came from. And if you look back to the big shootout, which was a game between the Longhorns and the Razorbacks in 1967, you can see the genesis. 67? 69. Why did I think it was 67? Everything was 69 back then.
Something we was talking about.
Oh, it was the Monkees, probably. Michael and Mike are here. They are the director and producer of the Big Shootout, and I'm a sports nut. And even looking at the footage that you guys were able to compile and all the archival interviews that you were able to put together for this one pivotal game between Texas and Arkansas, the game of the century as it was called, over and over again, I'm still astounded by it. First off, guys, thank you for coming to the festival and thanks for bringing this film to us.
Thanks. Yeah, we're tickled to be here.
How long were you guys, how far back were you saying, we need to do a documentary about this film?
Well, we did our first interview in April of 2010, but actually the way it started is I started working on a screenplay for a year and a half prior to where we started filming anyone. So we have a screenplay ready, but it was Mike Humphrey's idea, very realistically, going, we're going to need $20 million to make the movie. So as I was finishing the screenplay, which we're still excited about, and hopefully this documentary will dovetail into a feature film, as I was finishing the screenplay, Mike kept planting into my head, he says, we need to go make a documentary. And for me, the light went off one day. What he kept saying in the back of my mind was what really, it just clicked one day. I went, my gosh, Frank Broyles is 86, Darrell Royal's 86, Congressman Hammerschmidt's 88, Doc Worthington's 90. They're going to be gone. And so we just set down the screenplay one day and immediately called Don Stokes at Post Asylum and said, how do you make a documentary? And it wasn't real complicated to start. You just rented cameras and begged these people to let us talk to them.
You had mentioned that you thought it was going to take $20 million to make that film. Are you looking back at the process of putting together the Big Shootout and go, well, maybe we should have done the narrative after all, because it's a ton of footage to have to try to hunt down after 40 plus years.
I just think the story, the real story with the real people that were there is so compelling. There's so many elements to the story besides the game. It's the first game that a sitting president ever attended in the stands other than Army-Navy. Nixon was there during a very controversial period in the country. A Vietnam protest going on outside the stadium with him watching it from where his seats were. He could see perfectly. A black student was shot the night before the game. There was the playing of Dixie after every touchdown at Arkansas. And would they play it that day? Would they not? Had they played it, many students, over hundreds, would have rushed the field and protest. They never played it again. So there's so many elements to that day, more than just maybe the most watched up to that point football game in the history of sports. Half of every television set in America was tuned into that game.
Does it surprise you how many innovations the broadcast crew worked on to bring that game into everybody's home? How much people take those things for granted when they're watching a Sunday or a Monday night football game now? Well,
it was certainly a harder thing to arrange back then. Today, kind of in the spur of the moment, they can decide to televise a game. Back then, they had to decide in March, so 6 months before the game, do we want to try to rearrange this game and play it in December? And they had to go through a lot of hoopla to get it done. It was just so much different then, and both universities agreed. Of course, they asked Beano Cook, Roone Arledge asked Beano Cook, pick us a game we can put at the end of the year. We want them to be 1 and 2. We want the president to come to celebrate the 100th anniversary of college football. And Beano has no computers, no anything. He just looks at every schedule. Said, I think if you take that game and put it there, they'll be undefeated and they'll hopefully be 1 and 2. And by God, he bottled smoke and got it done. It could never happen again. Never.
both Coach Sproles and Coach Royal really didn't talk very much about that game afterwards. How gratifying was it to get Coach Royal in one of his final interviews talking about a pivotal game in his career? What's
unique is they were best friends. On the Arkansas side, it was so painful of a loss for Coach Broyles. I think it was just something that he did not want to talk about because it hurt him personally so bad. I think Coach Royal on the other side, who genuinely respected and cared about Broyles as a true friend, never wanted to make him feel like that he was inferior or that that they lost the game. I think he was the ultimate sportsman, which is really a really unique thing in today's world. And if you watch the game film as much as we watched it, there's not one iota ever of any player, no trash talk. It's guys helping other guys up. There was just the respect that the coaches had for each other certainly went down to the players and exists, 45 years later. But I think Coach Royal just did not want to make Coach Broyles feel bad about the loss, and I think that's why he didn't really talk about it that much.
I'm sorry, please.
Oh, I was just going to say, I don't think Royal was adverse to talking about it, but he certainly wasn't going to brag about it. And Broyles never gave an interview. Ours is the first one and the only one that he's ever talked about the shootout. So we're thankful for that. It's a miracle that he did it, I'm sure, especially some guys from Texas wandering down into his territory and driving out of there with that interview. When we drove out of Fayetteville, I remember Don Stokes going, "How did we pull this off?"
And no one was wearing orange on that crew at all that day.
Not at all.
and Mike and I did not go to Texas or Arkansas.
We both went to Texas Tech. So what are we doing here?
We were certainly the odd men out.
Out of all of the interviews that you guys did and all the research for the film, was there one piece that even surprised you as a filmmaker, looking at going, I thought I knew everything about it, but I didn't know this?
Well, my gosh. We were afraid of Coach Broyles. I don't know if Hump was really afraid. I can tell you I was genuinely afraid because we got a call right before he came in. And granted, we've never interviewed anybody. I've never interviewed a soul. I'm starting out A-team, Coach Broyles, and we got word that he might not come in because he didn't like the list of questions. The controversial questions being the ones on the Vietnam War or the racial unrest. And we knew he didn't want to talk about the game, so we're kind of going, uh-oh, what are we going to talk about? And then one of the voicemails that we got from his assistant said he may not come in, he didn't like the line of questions, he doesn't want to talk about this game. So I literally was scared to death. Bill Burnett, the Arkansas player, got Broyles on the phone, and I want to tell you, if we were here, you could hear Broyles and Burnett talking on the phone over there. And I'm going, he's yelling and he's angry. And I looked over at Hump and I said, why don't you take this interview? No one wanted to do it. But Bill Burnett hangs up the phone and he says, he's coming in, he's okay. And I went, my goodness, if he's okay, I don't want to see him when he's not. And he came storming in that room like Moses parting the Red Sea with this big smile on his face, and I looked at him and I got it immediately. That's how he controlled that state for 50 years. He was just setting the parameters. But back to your question, he told us what caused the demise of the Southwest Conference. It's never been written and it's never been told. And he said, do you have the camera turned off? And we said, yeah, but we didn't. And we have it. And I ain't telling unless I outlive him, I'll tell you that. So there is something we know that nobody knows that we're surprised to hear.
Dadgummit, you can't do that.
I know,
that's
bad.
Mean, man.
That's bad. But I'm more afraid of him than I am you.
I can definitely buy that. Was there anything that during the production that you took away from? It's like, wow, that killed me.
Well, for me, the success of Arkansas's athletic program financially, meaning when Coach Broyles came to Arkansas in 1958, their entire athletic budget was $300,000 a year. Now it's $85 million, and he shepherded that for 50 years. He's probably the most successful coach who turned athletic director ever. And just the ability to make a transition from a football coach managing a $100,000 budget to an executive managing an $85 million monstrosity and the success of over 50 years is something that I never really thought about, and it amazed me because he was really the CEO of Arkansas, and I mean the state, not only the university.
And a global brand.
And a global brand,
yeah.
Absolutely.
And that reminds me of what I think we could potentially do another film on with the footage we have. And this surprised me. I don't know if surprised, just didn't know it, or maybe we just started thinking about it. After we got in the middle of this, Texas won that game, but from that point on, things went better for Broyles. He became the most powerful man in the state. The University of Texas did not even take Royal's recommendation to succeed him. Royal lost 2 children, not 1 but 2, by auto accidents that happened within a mile of each other. Broyles became very powerful at Arkansas. Royal, although incredibly well respected, was just kind of, I hate to use the word farmed out to pasture, but he certainly did not have the influence on the university that Broyles did. Now, a lot of that may have been Broyles' own design. He didn't want to be in the middle of it. But for me, Broyles went on to be on the ABC 9 years. I mean, he was a very high profile, and Royal just kind of faded away. Certainly not outside of Austin, but on the national scope, he did.
There's an interesting story about Coach Royal. When Mack Brown, the current coach at Texas, took the job, he called Coach Royal and said, I'd love to visit with you. Would you come to my office? And Coach Royal said, I don't know where your office is. That's how long it had been since he had been in the athletic facility at Texas, which I thought was pretty amazing. But over the last year of his life, he was certainly involved, and to Coach Brown's credit and the current administrative staff, they really involved him, obviously the naming of the stadium and everything else. But so it turned around much so in the last 10 years.
It was, I was with him 4 times, and there would be a couple of months in between each time. And I really believe we filmed him in the summer of 2010. And I went back down there a couple of minutes later. They asked me to come speak on a World War II book for the retirement community. So I went back down and even in 2 months later, I went, whoa, I don't know if we could do it today. And we went and showed them the film, Christmas, a rough copy of it, Christmas of 2011, I believe. The first time we had a rough copy, because Edith asked us to come show it before he wouldn't know what he was seeing. And I knew that'd be the last time I'd see him alive. But he rallied to watch that film, and we left him a copy, and Edith said he would watch it in his room. People would be walking by in the hallway. He'd say, come watch this. So we brought him some joy.
That's incredibly good to know. When can people see this film outside of the festival circuit? Because I know it's not just for sports fans, but it's for people who want a good archival bit from that period.
We're currently shopping the film as we speak. We've got some different ideas on how to do some things. But we're in the process of that right now. Hopefully we'll have an answer for that soon. And we're excited about what that answer is going to be.
Well, it should be, because I mean, the trailer for the film has Corby Davidson from The Ticket, a local sports radio station, talking about the film and about that game, that it's one of the most, riveting things that, he had had a chance to watch. And I had the same reaction, because I was floored by it, as somebody who, is a sports nut, and somebody who wants to know more about that period, because every documentary that's done for it is just really a great window into that time. And thank you guys for bringing this to the festival. It's an absolute joy to see it. If you want to find out more about the future of the Big Shootout outside of the festival, we keep track of all of our alumni films. It's an alumni thing as well. Visit DallasFilm.org for all of that information. Guys, thank you so much for bringing us to the festival. It's an absolute joy to have you.
Sure.
Thanks for having us. Thank you.
You bet.